In a quiet room, a man stared at a single flickering light on the wall, wondering why it seemed to behave differently when he was watching it. Every time he looked away, it seemed ordinary, but the moment his eyes returned, it pulsed, almost as if it knew he was paying attention. He could feel a strange energy in the air, a tiny tension that made his heartbeat quicken. He wondered if it was real, or just his imagination playing tricks. Yet something deep inside told him that this was no ordinary light, that something unseen was responding to his gaze. Across the world, millions of people move through their lives without noticing the hidden layers of reality that quietly shape their world. Most never thought twice about the small patterns, the subtle coincidences, the strange moments when the universe seemed to whisper back. But a few rare minds, the 1%, could see what others could not, could sense the invisible threads connecting thought, awareness, and reality itself. Tonight, he would discover something most people never even imagined, a truth so strange, so powerful, that it could change how he understood himself, the world, and everything in between. He reached for a small notebook, filled with scribbles, sketches, and notes written over months. It was a map of questions, observations, and experiments, each page a clue, pointing toward a hidden law that most people would dismiss as fantasy. Yet he could feel it, a subtle pulse beneath the surface of ordinary life, a pattern waiting to be uncovered. Outside his window, the city lights blinked and shimmered, but they felt distant, almost unimportant. The real world, the one that truly mattered, was here, in this quiet room, in the space between observation and existence. He leaned closer to the flickering light, his mind alert and open, every thought focused on the mystery in front of him. What if the universe itself was watching back? What if reality was not fixed, but alive, changing, responding to awareness? He shivered at the thought, a mix of fear and excitement washing over him, because if it was true, then nothing he had believed about life, about cause and effect, about the world as he knew it, could ever be the same again. And then it happened, a moment so subtle that it almost seemed imagined. The light pulsed differently, brighter, as if acknowledging his presence, a tiny confirmation that something incredible was unfolding. He felt a rush of awe, a sense of connection with something far greater than himself, something ancient, mysterious, and profound. Could this be the law that only 1% understand? He whispered, though no one was there to hear. The thought made his mind race, because if he could understand this, even a little, he might finally see what the majority of humans miss their whole lives, the hidden law that quietly shapes reality. With every observation, every thought, every choice, tonight, he was on the edge of a revelation, a secret hidden in plain sight, waiting for those willing to notice, to pay attention, to truly see. And as he leaned back, eyes wide, heart pounding, he knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning, a doorway into a world that most people would never enter, a world where consciousness and reality were more intertwined than anyone had dared to imagine. And in that moment, the question echoed in his mind, and now in yours: are you ready to step through the doorway too? Are you among the 1% who can truly see this quantum truth? The man sat quietly, still feeling the echo of the strange light pulsing beneath his gaze. His mind was alive with questions, each one sharper than the last. He remembered reading about experiments where tiny particles, invisible to the naked eye, seemed to change simply because someone watched them. Scientists had called it the observer effect, a curious law of quantum physics that sounded almost magical. When a particle is observed, measured, or even suspected of being noticed, it behaves differently than if it were ignored, as if awareness itself nudges reality. The idea was difficult to grasp, even for the brightest minds, yet he felt it in his chest, a strange recognition that this could explain the strange flicker he had just seen. He pictured a simple experiment, one of the classic examples. A tiny particle moving through a maze of two paths could act like a wave, spreading across both paths, or like a particle, taking only one. But the moment a scientist looked to see which path it chose, the wave collapsed. The particle chose a definite path, and the world shifted, not because the particle wanted to, but because observation itself demanded a choice. It was as if the universe was whispering a secret, revealing that nothing exists in isolation, that perception and reality are connected, in ways that the human mind had barely begun to understand. He thought about the light in his room, how it had pulsed differently when he watched it. Could something similar be happening in daily life, in the world around him? in the events that seemed ordinary and predictable. He realized this law was not just for particles, not just for laboratories, but a hint at a deeper truth, a hidden rule that could touch every aspect of reality. Consciousness was not separate from the universe. It was a part of its fabric, shaping it in subtle, mysterious ways. And yet, few people ever noticed. Few people ever questioned. Most walked through life as though the world were a machine, fixed and unchangeable. But for those willing to look closely, to observe with intention, the world revealed hidden patterns, strange coincidences, and small miracles that whispered, "There is more than meets the eye." He leaned back in his chair, mind racing with possibility. Could this law explain intuition, synchronicities, and the uncanny moments when life seemed to respond to thought? Could it even be the reason some people appear to attract opportunity, insight, or success, as if the universe itself was subtly bending toward them? For the first time, he began to see the observer effect not as a strange quirk of physics, but as a key to understanding reality itself, a lens through which the hidden laws of consciousness, perception, and existence could be glimpsed. And as he wrote down his thoughts in the notebook, a thrill ran through him, because he realized this was not just about science, it was about awakening, about stepping into the small circle of people who noticed, who questioned, who dared to see. And now the real journey was beginning. The path to understanding the law that only 1% of people ever truly grasp. Could he take the next step? Could you, the viewer, take this step with him, to see the quantum truth hiding behind the ordinary? Waiting for those willing to look, the man closed his eyes for a moment, trying to feel the invisible thread connecting his mind to the world around him. He could sense something shifting, subtle, almost imperceptible, as if the air itself responded to his attention. He thought about the observer effect, how particles changed simply by being observed, and began to wonder, could the same principle apply to the larger world, to the things he touched, saw, and thought about every day? Could his awareness, his consciousness, play a role in shaping reality, not just in a laboratory, but in his own life? It was a strange thought, one that most people would dismiss immediately, yet it felt undeniable. He remembered reading about great thinkers throughout history, philosophers and scientists who had sensed this connection long before experiments could prove it. They wrote about the mind as a lens, focusing attention, shaping perception, and even influencing the world itself. He pictured life as a vast canvas, and consciousness as a brush that could subtly paint events, patterns, and outcomes. The world was not fixed, but alive, dynamic, a dance between the observer and the observed, between attention and existence, between thought and manifestation. He thought of the tiny coincidences he had noticed in his life, moments that felt too precise to be random, a stranger appearing just when he needed advice, an opportunity arriving unexpectedly, a sudden insight that solved a problem he had been struggling with. Perhaps these were not accidents, but hints of a deeper reality, a world shaped in part by consciousness itself. As he opened his eyes, the room seemed different, richer, filled with hidden layers that had been invisible before. He realized that seeing this truth required more than knowledge. It required awareness, curiosity, and a willingness to question the assumptions that most people took for granted. He picked up his notebook again, scribbling a simple question. If consciousness can influence reality, how far does it reach? What does it create? What does it shape? The thought made his heart race, because if it were true, then every thought, every intention, every moment of focused awareness could ripple through the universe, leaving traces, shaping outcomes, revealing patterns invisible to the ordinary mind. And then he considered the possibility that reality was not just external, but co-created, a collaboration between mind and matter. The universe might not be a machine, obeying fixed rules, but a living, interactive system responding to the presence of those who notice, who pay attention, who participate consciously. He felt a thrill of both excitement and awe, knowing that few people would ever see this, that most lived their lives unaware of the subtle power of their own consciousness. But for those who dared to look, to focus, to observe with intention, a hidden world waited, full of mystery, beauty, and possibility. And as he stared once more at the flickering light, he understood that this journey was only beginning, that understanding consciousness and reality required courage, patience, and a willingness to see beyond the ordinary. And he wondered, as now you might wonder too, are you ready to step into this hidden world, to see how your mind connects with the universe, to glimpse the reality that only the 1% ever notice. The man leaned back in his chair, notebook in hand, pondering a difficult truth. Most people would never notice the hidden patterns of reality. They were trapped in routine, focused on survival, work, and the endless distractions of daily life. He thought about why only a few, the rare 1%, could see the subtle threads connecting consciousness and the world. It was not because they were smarter, richer, or luckier, but because they saw differently. They paid attention, questioned assumptions, and refused to accept the world at face value. He imagined the millions of people walking through life blind to the invisible, missing the quiet hints the universe gave, the coincidences, the small nudges that seemed impossible to explain. These signs existed, but only the observant, but curious, could recognize them. He remembered his own journey. The nights spent watching flickering lights, noting coincidences, asking questions that seemed strange or even foolish to others. That effort, that dedication to noticing the small and subtle, was what separated him from the majority. It was the willingness to see beyond the obvious, to train the mind to perceive what others ignored. Society conditioned most people to follow rules, routines, and habits, to accept life as fixed, predictable, and external. The human brain, wired for safety and efficiency, filtered out anything unusual, anything that did not fit expectations. Those filters kept people safe, but they also hid the deeper truths, the hidden connections between awareness and reality. He jotted down a note. Observation requires courage, curiosity, and persistence, because to see the quantum truth, to sense the subtle influence of consciousness on reality, one had to break free from habitual thinking, question beliefs, and embrace uncertainty. And yet, for those who tried, the reward was extraordinary. A glimpse of the hidden layers of reality, a sense of connection to the universe, a feeling that life was richer, deeper, and more magical than ordinary perception allowed. The 1% were not special by birth, but by choice, by willingness to observe, to notice, to pay attention. The man stared at the light again, thinking about how few people would ever take this step, how few would stop, look, and question, how few would allow themselves to notice the world bending subtly in response to awareness. It made the journey feel both precious and urgent, a gift for those who dared to see. And as he wrote in his notebook, he whispered to himself, "The hidden law waits for those willing to notice, waiting for the mind that sees differently." He realized that understanding the quantum truth was not about knowledge alone, but about perception, awareness, and willingness to see what most ignore. He glanced at the window, city lights shimmering in the distance, and thought, if only a few nighters, could he help others awaken too? Could he guide those curious enough to step into the hidden patterns, the invisible laws that shaped reality? And now, the question hung in the air, not just for him, but for you watching. Are you ready to notice, to awaken, to see the truth that only the 1% ever understand? The man opened his notebook, determined to take the next step. He had glimpsed the hidden patterns, the subtle ways consciousness seemed to shape reality, but now he wanted more. He wanted to see clearly, to understand, to feel the connection for himself. He remembered the advice of teachers and thinkers who had explored consciousness. They said the first step was simple, yet powerful. Focus, attention, observe carefully, notice without judgment. He realized that most people never truly looked, their minds wandering, distracted by routine, but observation could awaken awareness. He picked a small object from the table, a pen, and placed it in the center of his desk. He focused on it, not just looking, but noticing every detail, the texture, the weight, the way light reflected off its surface. He imagined it responding to his attention, and in a way, it seemed to do just that. Subtle shifts in perception appeared as he concentrated. He wrote a short exercise in his notebook. Choose one small thing each day. Observe it fully. Notice how it changes with attention. It was simple, but he understood that small acts of awareness could reveal the larger truth, that the world was responsive, alive, waiting to be noticed. Next, he considered thought itself, the power of intention. He remembered stories of people who had shaped their lives with focused awareness, small shifts in perception, deliberate attention to opportunities. He realized that thoughts were not just mental events, they were tools, guiding reality in quiet, almost invisible ways. He imagined practicing mindfulness, being fully present in every moment, feeling the connection between mind and world, noticing coincidences, patterns, and subtle changes. Each observation, each moment of awareness could expand perception. Opening the mind to the hidden rules of reality, he paused, thinking about the experiments he had read about, the strange particles that changed simply because someone observed them. If tiny particles responded to attention, why could not the larger world, including life events, patterns, and opportunities, respond to? He began to see that the act of observing was itself a bridge between consciousness and reality. He wrote another note: start small, observe everything, trust your awareness. Question what seems ordinary, because this was the path into the hidden 1%, the people who saw what most ignored, who noticed the subtle cues, the quiet laws, shaping the world. And as he looked around his room, everything seemed alive in a new way. The flickering light, the pen, even the air seemed connected, a part of a larger pattern waiting to be observed. He smiled, knowing that he could not force the truth, but he could cultivate awareness, and through that awareness, begin to see the world as it truly was. Finally, he looked out the window at the city lights, thinking about you, the viewer. The hidden patterns, the subtle laws, the observer effect were not just for him, but for anyone willing to notice, anyone willing to focus, to observe, to awaken. Could you take the first step? Could you begin to see the quantum truth that most people never notice? And as the room pulsed softly with quiet energy, he knew the journey was real. The 1% were not distant, not unreachable. They were simply those who chose to notice, who chose to awaken, who chose to see. The man sat quietly, notebook closed, feeling a deep calm. He had explored the flickering light, the observer effect, the subtle ways consciousness might shape reality. And now it all seemed to converge into a single, breathtaking truth. He realized that reality was not fixed, not separate from awareness, but alive, responsive, and intertwined with the mind. Every thought, every focus, every moment of attention rippled outward, connecting him to the unseen patterns of the universe. The world was not just around him, it was part of him, and he was part of it. A sense of awe filled him, as if he had glimpsed a secret that had been hidden in plain sight. For centuries, thinkers, scientists, and mystics had hinted at this truth, yet most people never noticed. Yet now he could feel it, a subtle energy, a quiet dance between observer and observed, between mind and matter. He looked around the room, and ordinary objects seemed to shimmer with hidden meaning. The flickering light, the pen, even the air itself, all part of a living network, responding to attention, inviting observation, reminding him that reality was co-created with every conscious moment. And as he thought, he imagined a world where more people began to awaken, where awareness was cultivated, where the hidden patterns of the universe became visible to those willing to notice. The possibilities seemed infinite. Each moment, each thought, a brushstroke on the canvas of reality, shaping life, experience, and understanding in ways most could not imagine. He felt a profound connection to something greater than himself, a quiet intelligence in the universe that listened, responded, and reflected the awareness of those who observed it. The hidden quantum truth was not distant or unreachable. It was present in every mind willing to awaken, to question, to see. And then he smiled, thinking about the 1% who understood, not as a group of elites, but as those who simply chose to notice, to focus, to awaken awareness. The law was not a secret kept from the world. It was waiting, open to anyone willing to step into the hidden patterns, to explore the connection between consciousness and reality. He leaned back, eyes wide, heart full of wonder, and knew that this journey was just beginning, that anyone willing to pay attention, to notice, to awaken, could step into this hidden world, could experience the subtle, powerful, life-changing truth for themselves. And now, the question lingered. Has it echoed from him to you, the viewer? Are you ready to awaken, to notice, to see the hidden threads of reality, to become part of the 1% who truly understand? The universe is listening, watching, waiting, and your awareness is the key. As the room pulsed softly with quiet energy, he whispered to himself, and perhaps to you too, the quantum truth is here, it is alive, and it is waiting for those who choose to see.